is Bloomberg West. I'm Emily Chang. It was a bit of a shock and kind of exciting when Apple CEO Steve Jobs walked on stage today to unveil the iPad 2. Does this signal he's back at the helm? Let's ask the man who wrote the book on Steve Jobs. Leander Khaney is author of Inside Steve's Brain. Also with Corey is Adam Satariano from Bloomberg News, who was at today's Apple event. Welcome to both of you. So, Leander, what does this mean that he made an appearance at this event? Was he trying to dispel horrible rumors that he was really on his deathbed?
Yeah, obviously he's trying to address that speculation. But also, I mean, this is his job. I mean, he loves to do this. So he's been at work at Apple since taking his medical leave, and he's been doing this for at least a dozen years. And he loves to do it, so it's natural for him to take the reins.
What do you know about his condition? I mean, it actually looked like he was getting better.
He looked pretty good. I mean, he's thinner than the new iPad, but he looked pretty vigorous. I mean, his voice was strong. He had a lot of energy. When he took his first leave back in 2009, he gave a presentation, and he obviously didn't have the energy to do the whole thing. His voice was shaky. He looked a lot sicker then than he does now.
All right, Adam, let me ask you, when you saw Jobs walk out there, was that a great surprise to you? I know you cover this company. You've got a lot of sources around the world, the Apple ecosphere.
When he walked out, he got a standing ovation. I mean, people were surprised to see him. And then he went right into the pitch of the iPad 2. And he really went after the competitors, which I thought was interesting, how he immediately talked about, is this going to be the year of the copycats, or is this going to be the year of the iPad 2? When obviously he thinks it'll be the iPad 2.
Well, obviously. And these events are funny. For someone who hasn't been to these, it's not a product introduction. It's like a Steve Jobs fan show. But maybe there's something different given his health concerns?
No, I mean, it's still that. I mean, one moment in particular, they showed off this new case that they have in which kind of magnets flip over the thing. And when he was done showing it, he got this huge ovation for it.
A case with magnets, and he gets a standing O?
It wasn't standing, but it was...
Yes. That's an Apple product event, definitely.
Yeah.
So, Adam, Tim Cook was there, but he didn't speak at all. Do you think this signals that Steve Jobs might be coming back soon?
Well, I think what this shows is that Steve is still very much involved in the day-to-day operations. I was talking to someone shortly afterwards, and he said that this shows that how important the product is to Apple to have Steve there. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Leander, the only thing, it seems, that can overshadow the iPad 2 is Steve Jobs himself. I mean, he has really become the story here, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, he is Apple. Apple is Steve Jobs. There was so much fear that without him, the company would flounder. So, yeah, it's definitely, that's the biggest news today, is him showing up and looking pretty healthy.
Now, Adam, let me ask you also about the product itself, and I did a little thing earlier about the margins of the product and how it works against competitors, because they keep coming with a product with more features. I'm not going to say better, but a product with more features at a slightly lower price than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Apple, compared to its competitors, has a tremendous amount of cash on its balance sheet. Right. I mean, by one metric, $60 billion.
That was the number I used. I'm glad we agreed on that.
We're on the same page. And so they're able to, how they want to leverage that in different ways. For example, they buy components in bulk in advance, something that their competitors don't do. And I think you start to see a little bit of that in the price.
And it's such volume. I mean, I read something that they were sucking up like 25% of the panel display market when it comes to these things. It was speculation, but it speaks to just how big the phenomenon is and how Apple can use it to their pricing power.
Yeah, exactly. And there's other things that they can leverage as well. For example, they have this huge retail operation that they've built from nothing over the past decade or more. And so they're able to leverage those 300 stores, and everyone flocks to them for those big events. There'll be cameras there, and it just feeds on itself.
Leander, does Apple's future depend on Steve Jobs coming back to the company, or does the momentum carry on regardless here?
Oh, it's got huge momentum. Nothing's going to stop it for the next couple of years, whether he comes back or not. The question long term is kind of unanswerable. Obviously, he's irreplaceable. But I think the last 10 years, he's managed to shape that company pretty much in his own image. And if you look at Pixar, Pixar was able to churn out a decade's worth of hits without him micromanaging it, because he set up these creative processes there at the company, and he's done the same thing at Apple. So, it's a good question, but I think they're going to be okay.
All right, so let me ask you a similar kind of thing. When you did the Kremlin watching, Brian Marshall's on before saying he noticed Tim Cook in the first row shortly before the event was going to start. Did you see sort of certain people in the room, or you know who you're going to talk to afterwards, know who's actually getting the real scoop?
Well, you do sort of watch the front few rows to see who is there, and like
it is
Brian,
the Kremlin.
But like Brian said, when you saw Tim Cook in the first few rows, you started to wonder, well, shouldn't he be backstage just for the start of the show? And so he started to be a little bit more attentive to see if Jobs was going to show up.
Adam, and what do we know about Apple's succession plan? What has developed since Steve Jobs has gone on medical leave?
Well, Apple hasn't disclosed much about the succession plan. There was a shareholder vote in which 30% of the shareholders said that they would like to see more about Apple's succession plans. I mean, in the 3 times that Jobs has left, Tim Cook has taken over on the company. And each time, the company has performed well in terms of stock price, and sales have grown.
Now, Leander, let me ask you, what do you think the odds are, when you've covered the company in such a culture way, of bringing in an outsider? Do you think they have to stay with somebody on the inside if Steve Jobs is to step down for good?
Yeah, there's no way they're going to bring in an outsider. They tried that last time with Gil Media, and look what happened with that.
That didn't work out too well.
No, they're going to go with somebody inside, and it's going to be the team. I think Tim Cook will lead the team, but it's also going to be contributions from Johnny Ive, Phil Schiller, and all the rest of Scott Forstall, the other executives that are already there.
And do you think their hesitance to reveal any kind of a plan has to do with perhaps Jobs being healthy again?
Well, I was wondering whether this was, today's appearance was part of their sort of succession plan. I was wondering whether he was going to bring out Tim Cook and that they would sort of co-present the iPad 2, and that maybe his medical leave is part of this sort of slow transition. And obviously it didn't happen today, but this is what I suspect will happen. I don't think he'll come back full time, but eventually they'll start to hand over the reins a little more, and we'll see more of this, co-presentation of products and stuff like that.
All right, thank you so much, Leander Khaney, author of Inside Steve's Brain, and Adam Satariano, Bloomberg News reporter on Apple.